Blood spattered across the wooden floorboards of Miss Harrington's Academy for Young Ladies as Vanessa Ackerman's fist connected with Charles Pemberton's jaw. The wealthy rancher's son stumbling backward with a look of shocked outrage. The other girls gasped in horror, but Vanessa stood firm, her chest heaving with righteous anger as she positioned herself protectively in front of Eliza Morgan, whose torn blouse and tear-streaked face told a story that needed no words. "You keep your filthy hands off her," Vanessa snarled, her voice steady despite the trembling in her limbs. At 20 years old, she was older than most of the students at the finishing school, sent here by her father who insisted a proper education would tame her wild spirit. "Or next time you'll lose more than your dignity." It was April 1875 in Silver Creek, Nevada, and Vanessa had just sealed her fate. Miss Harrington, the pinch-faced headmistress, came rushing into the room, her face blanching at the scene before her. "Miss Ackerman, what is the meaning of this?" she screeched, hurrying to help young Pemberton to his feet. "This gentleman," Vanessa spat the word, cornered Eliza in the supply closet when she was fetching books. "I heard her crying for help." Charles dabbed at his bleeding lip with a monogrammed handkerchief. "The girl is delusional. I was merely asking for directions." "With your hands up her skirt," Vanessa challenged, her gray eyes flashing. Miss Harrington's face hardened. "That is quite enough, Miss Ackerman. Mr. Pemberton is the son of our most generous benefactor." "And that makes it acceptable for him to assault your students," Vanessa demanded. "I will not tolerate such vulgar accusations." Miss Harrington turned to Eliza, who was clutching her torn blouse closed. "Miss Morgan, I'm certain this was all a misunderstanding." Eliza's eyes darted nervously between the headmistress and Charles Pemberton, who was glaring at her with a silent threat. She lowered her gaze. "Yes, madam, a misunderstanding. There, you see." Miss Harrington smiled tightly. "Now, Mr. Pemberton, please accept my deepest apologies for this unpleasantness." "I want that savage expelled," Charles demanded, pointing at Vanessa. "My father will hear of this." Vanessa's stomach dropped, but she didn't back down. Better expelled than complicit. 2 hours later, Vanessa stood outside the academy gates, a single trunk containing all her possessions at her feet. Her expulsion had been swift and merciless. Miss Harrington had made it abundantly clear that her father would be notified of her violent and unladylike behavior, and that no respectable school would accept her after this incident. Vanessa brushed a strand of auburn hair from her face and squared her shoulders. She had enough money saved to make it to her cousin's place in Tonopah Junction. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was better than returning home to face her father's disappointment and rage. The stagecoach arrived the following day, and Vanessa boarded with as much dignity as she could muster, ignoring the curious glances of the other passengers. The journey was long and dusty, the coach jostling over rough terrain as it made its way through the Nevada desert. By the time they reached Tonopah Junction 3 days later, Vanessa was exhausted, her fashionable traveling dress wrinkled and dirt-stained. The town was smaller than she expected, a collection of wooden buildings straddling the main street, with the obligatory saloon, general store, and sheriff's office. The air smelled of dust and horse manure, with a hint of wood smoke from the blacksmith's forge. It was a far cry from the polished opulence of Miss Harrington's Academy or her father's estate in Sacramento. "Miss, this is your stop," the driver called, interrupting her thoughts. Vanessa gathered her skirts and descended from the coach, wincing as her boots hit the hard, packed dirt. A quick glance around confirmed her fear her cousin Timothy was nowhere to be seen, despite her telegram informing him of her arrival. "Need help with your trunk, miss?" the driver asked, already loosening the straps securing her luggage. "Thank you," she replied, reaching for her purse to offer a tip. The trunk landed with a thud beside her, and the driver tipped his hat before climbing back onto his seat. With a crack of his whip, the stagecoach rattled away, leaving Vanessa alone in the unfamiliar town. She stood uncertain for a moment, dust swirling around her ankles as she contemplated her next move. The Silver Dollar Saloon across the street seemed to be the busiest establishment. Perhaps someone there could direct her to her cousin's home. Gathering her courage, Vanessa approached a young boy who was sweeping the boardwalk in front of the general store. "Excuse me, could you tell me where to find Timothy Winters? He's my cousin." The boy looked up, his freckled face scrunched in thought. "Mr. Winters?" "He don't live here no more, miss. Packed up and headed to California about a month ago." "Gold fever," my pa said. The news hit Vanessa like a physical blow. Her one lifeline gone. "I see, thank you. You want me to fetch the sheriff? He might know more," the boy offered. Vanessa shook her head. The last thing she needed was to draw attention to herself before she figured out what to do next. "No, that won't be necessary." She retreated to a bench outside the stagecoach office, her mind racing. Her funds would cover a few nights at a hotel, but without a job or a place to stay long-term, she would soon be destitute. Returning home wasn't an option. Her father had made it clear that if she couldn't behave at the academy, she needn't bother coming back. Lost in her thoughts, Vanessa didn't notice the commotion until it was directly in front of her. A woman's frightened cry cut through the air, followed by angry male voices. Across the street, two rough-looking men had cornered a young woman against the wall of the Mercantile. One gripped her arm while the other leered uncomfortably close to her face. "Come on, darlin', just one drink," the taller man insisted, his voice carrying across the street. "Don't be so uppity." "I said no," the woman replied, attempting to pull away. "Please let me go." Without thinking, Vanessa rose to her feet. Hadn't she just been expelled for this very thing? Yet she couldn't stand by and watch. Before she could reconsider, she was crossing the street, her hand gripping her parasol tightly. "I believe the lady declined your invitation," Vanessa called out, her voice steadier than she felt. The men turned, surprised to see another woman confronting them. The taller one, a scraggly bearded fellow with a scar across his cheek, sneered. "This ain't your business, miss. Move along." "I'm making it my business," Vanessa replied, stepping closer. "Release her at once." "Or what?" the second man challenged, his breath reeking of cheap whiskey. "You gonna hit us with that fancy umbrella?" In fact, that was exactly what Vanessa was considering, but before she could respond, a deep voice spoke from behind her. "Or I'll put a bullet in you, Reynolds. Your choice." The men stiffened, their expressions changing from amusement to wariness. Vanessa turned to see a tall man standing a few paces away, his hand resting casually on the revolver at his hip. He wore the dust-covered clothes of a cowboy, faded denim pants, a blue cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and well-worn leather boots. A sheriff's star gleamed on his vest. "We were just having a friendly conversation, Sheriff," the scarred man protested, releasing the woman's arm. "Didn't look friendly from where I'm standing," the sheriff replied, his blue eyes hard beneath the brim of his hat. "Now get moving before I decide the town jail needs occupants." The men muttered curses but backed away, disappearing into the saloon across the street. The woman they'd been harassing straightened her shawl, offering Vanessa a grateful smile. "Thank you," she said softly. "Most folks would have just walked on by." "Are you all right?" Vanessa asked, concerned. "Thanks to you and Sheriff Oakley here," she nodded toward the lawman. "I'm Martha Wilson. I work at the hotel." "Vanessa Ackerman," Vanessa replied, then turned to the sheriff, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "That was brave," he said, "stepping in like that." "Foolish, but brave." Vanessa lifted her chin. Should I have ignored her distress? A hint of a smile touched his lips. No, madam, that's exactly why I stepped in too. He touched the brim of his hat. Isaac Oakley, County Sheriff. Pleasure to meet you, Sheriff, Vanessa replied formally, suddenly conscious of her travel-worn appearance. I've just arrived in town. I can see that. He nodded toward her trunk, still sitting forlornly by the stagecoach stop. Visiting family, Vanessa hesitated. That was the plan, but it seems my cousin left town recently. Martha made a sympathetic noise. You must be Timothy's cousin. He mentioned you might come. Left for California about 4 weeks ago. So I've been told, Vanessa sighed. Martha glanced at the sheriff, then back to Vanessa. Well, you'll need a place to stay. The Juniper Hotel has reasonable rates and we're clean if not fancy. Thank you. That would be, Reynolds and his friend might hold a grudge, Sheriff Oakley interrupted, his eyes scanning the saloon doors. Those men work for the Silver Creek Mining Company. They're not used to being stood up to, especially by a woman. Martha nodded grimly. He's right. They can be trouble. Vanessa felt a flutter of anxiety but forced it down. I can handle myself. The sheriff's expression suggested he had doubts about that. All the same, I'd feel better if I escorted you to the hotel. He gestured to her trunk. May I? Before she could respond, he hefted the heavy trunk as if it weighed nothing, tucking it under one arm. Lead the way, Mrs. Wilson. As they walked toward the hotel, Vanessa found herself studying Sheriff Oakley from the corner of her eye. He was younger than she'd initially thought, probably in his late 20s, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. Despite his lean build, the ease with which he carried her trunk spoke of considerable strength. What brings you to Tonopah Junction, Miss Ackerman? He asked, breaking the silence. Besides your absent cousin. Vanessa hesitated, unwilling to share the true circumstances of her arrival. I needed a change of scenery. Most people changing scenery don't come to Tonopah, he remarked dryly. They leave it. I'm not most people, Sheriff. No, he agreed, that faint smile appearing again. I gathered that when you faced down 2 mining company men with nothing but a parasol. They reached the hotel, a 2-story wooden structure with a wide porch and clean windows. Martha hurried ahead to open the door, and Sheriff Oakley followed Vanessa inside, setting her trunk down in the modest lobby. Thank you for your assistance, Vanessa said formally. He nodded, studying her face for a moment. If you need anything, the sheriff's office is just down the street. Might be best to avoid the saloon and keep to yourself until those men forget about today. I'll take that under advisement, she replied, though his protective tone rankled slightly. She had managed just fine before his arrival. Something in her expression must have betrayed her thoughts because he chuckled softly. I have no doubt you're capable, Miss Ackerman, but even capable folks need allies in a new town. With that, he tipped his hat to both women and departed, his spurs jingling faintly as he walked. Martha showed Vanessa to a small but clean room on the 2nd floor. It's $15 a week, includes breakfast. Bathrooms at the end of the hall. Thank you, Vanessa said, calculating how long her savings would last at that rate. I'll need to find employment soon. Are there opportunities for women in town? Martha hesitated. Well, there's the saloon, but you don't strike me as the type. The mercantile sometimes needs help and doctor. Ellis's wife was saying she could use assistance with their children. I can ask around if you'd like. I would appreciate that very much. After Martha left, Vanessa unpacked her few belongings and washed the travel dust from her face and hands. The room was sparse but comfortable, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small writing desk beneath the window that overlooked the main street. She sat on the edge of the bed, the events of the past few days catching up to her. From the respected daughter of a successful businessman to an expelled student to a homeless job seeker in a frontier town, all in less than a week. Tears threatened, but she blinked them away. Self-pity would solve nothing. Tomorrow, she would begin looking for work. Tonight, she would rest and gather her strength. She had faced worse challenges than this and survived. Tanapa Junction might not have been her intended destination, but perhaps it was where she needed to be. The following morning, Vanessa dressed in her simplest skirt and shirtwaist, pinned her hair into a practical bun, and set out to find employment. The town looked different in the clear morning light, less intimidating and more alive with activity. Wagons rolled down the main street, shopkeepers swept their storefronts, and the blacksmith's hammer rang out in a steady rhythm. Her first stop was the mercantile, where the proprietor, a balding man named Mr. Collins, regretfully informed her that he had no positions available. "Business has been slow since the new mining operation opened their company store," he explained. "I've had to let staff go, not hire more." Undeterred, Vanessa tried the post office, the small dressmaker's shop, and even the newspaper office. Everywhere the answer was the same: no work available. By midday, her initial optimism had faded, replaced by growing concern. She paused outside the Silver Dollar Saloon, considering her options. Martha had mentioned it as a possibility, and while working in a saloon wasn't ideal, it would provide an income. Before she could decide whether to inquire within, a voice called out to her. "Miss Ackerman." She turned to see Sheriff Oakley approaching, looking more official today in a clean shirt and polished star. He carried a stack of wanted posters under one arm. "Good morning, Sheriff," she greeted him, forcing a smile. "Job hunting?" he asked, nodding toward the saloon door. "Unsuccessfully thus far," she admitted. "I'm beginning to think my options are limited." He frowned slightly. "The Silver Dollar isn't the place for a lady like yourself." Vanessa bristled at his presumption. "A lady like myself needs to eat and pay for lodging, Sheriff. Beggars can't be choosers." "There are other options," he said, his expression thoughtful. "Doc Ellis mentioned his wife is looking for help with their children and household." "Yes, Martha mentioned that as well. I was planning to inquire this afternoon." "I'm heading that way now. I could introduce you," he offered. When she hesitated, he added, "Mrs. Ellis is particular about who she lets near her children. My recommendation would help." Vanessa considered his offer. Pride urged her to refuse, to make her own way without his assistance. But practicality won out. "That would be kind of you, Sheriff." They walked side by side down the dusty street, an oddly matched pair drawing curious glances from townspeople. "You never did say what brought you to Tanapa," Sheriff Oakley remarked conversationally. "Most young ladies don't travel alone to frontier towns." "Most young ladies haven't been expelled from finishing school for punching the benefactor's son," Vanessa replied without thinking, then immediately regretted her candor. To her surprise, the sheriff let out a genuine laugh. "Now that's a story I'd like to hear." Vanessa found herself smiling despite her circumstances. "It's not very flattering." "I doubt that," he said, his blue eyes warm with amusement. "What'd he do to deserve it?" she sobered. "He was taking liberties with another student. When I intervened, he claimed I attacked him without provocation. And they believed him over you. His father donates generously to the school," Vanessa explained bitterly. "The headmistress made it clear that his comfort was more important than our safety." Sheriff Oakley's expression hardened. "That's not right." "No, it isn't, but it's the way of things." "Not everywhere," he said firmly. "Not here, at least not while I'm sheriff." They reached a neat white house at the edge of town, with a small garden and a wooden swing hanging from a large oak tree. Sheriff Oakley knocked on the door, which was opened moments later by a harried-looking woman with flour on her hands. "Isaac, what brings you by?" she asked, then noticed Vanessa. "Oh, hello, Mrs. Ellis, this is Miss Vanessa Ackerman. She's new in town and looking for employment. I remembered you mentioning needing help with the little ones." Mrs. Ellis brightened. "Indeed I do. Please come in, both of you." The house was chaotic but homey, with evidence of children everywhere, wooden toys scattered across the floor, small shoes by the door, and a half-finished puzzle on the dining table. From somewhere, upstairs came the sound of children's laughter. "My husband's practice keeps him busy day and night," Mrs. Ellis explained as she led them to the kitchen, where she had been baking. "And with 4 children under 10, I'm at my wits' end most days." "I've had experience tutoring younger students," Vanessa offered. "And I'm comfortable with household duties." Mrs. Ellis studied her thoughtfully. "Can you read and write? Do sums? My oldest James needs help with his schoolwork." "Yes, madam. I received high marks in mathematics and literature before." She trailed off, unsure how to explain her expulsion. "Before she decided to seek opportunities out west," Sheriff Oakley finished smoothly. Mrs. Ellis nodded. "Well, I can offer room and board plus $10 a week. You'd have Sundays off and 1 evening a week for personal time. How does that sound?" It was less money than Vanessa had hoped for, but the inclusion of room and board made it a reasonable offer. "That sounds acceptable, Mrs. Ellis. When would you like me to start? Can you move in today?" The children's bedtime is a particular challenge, and having an extra pair of hands tonight would be a blessing. Vanessa glanced at Sheriff Oakley, who nodded encouragingly. "I can gather my things from the hotel immediately." "Wonderful, Mrs. Ellis clapped her flour-covered hands together, sending a small cloud into the air. "Let me introduce you to the children. James is 8, the twins Emily and Elizabeth are 6, and little George is 4. As if summoned, 4 small figures appeared in the doorway, curious eyes fixed on the stranger in their kitchen. Vanessa smiled warmly at them, and after a moment of shy hesitation, they smiled back. "Children, this is Miss Ackerman. She'll be living with us and helping with your lessons and bedtimes." The oldest boy, James, stepped forward with a solemn expression. "Do you know any good stories, Miss Ackerman?" "As a matter of fact, I know dozens," Vanessa replied, crouching to his level. "Would you like to hear one?" His face lit up, and he nodded enthusiastically. The tension in Vanessa's shoulders eased slightly. Perhaps this arrangement would work out after all. Sheriff Oakley excused himself, promising to return later with her trunk from the hotel. As he turned to leave, he paused at the door. "Miss Ackerman." "Yes, Sheriff. That fella you punched at the school. What about him?" A slow smile spread across his face. "I bet he had it coming." With that, he was gone, leaving Vanessa with a strange, fluttering sensation in her chest that had nothing to do with her new employment. The Ellis household quickly became Vanessa's new world. The days were long and often exhausting, filled with lessons for James, games with the twins, and endless stories for little George. Housework filled the spaces between helping with meals, mending clothes, and keeping the ever-encroaching chaos at bay. Yet for all its challenges, Vanessa found unexpected contentment in the rhythm of family life. Dr. Ellis was a kind, distracted man who spent most of his time attending to patients, while Mrs. Ellis Clara, as she insisted Vanessa call her after the first week, was warm and appreciative of the help. The children were bright and generally well-behaved, though not without their moments of mischief. 2 weeks into her employment, Vanessa was returning from the mercantile with James in tow when they encountered Sheriff Oakley outside the telegraph office. He tipped his hat to them, his eyes crinkling at the corners when he smiled. "Miss Ackerman, Master Ellis. Fine day for a walk." James beamed at being addressed so formally. "We're getting supplies for Ma's pie, Sheriff." "Is that right? Your mother makes the best apple pie in the territory." "It's peach this time," James informed him proudly. "Miss Ackerman's teaching me fractions while we measure ingredients." "Smart thinking," the sheriff nodded appreciatively. "Learning mathematics and getting pie out of the bargain." Vanessa smiled. "Hello, Sheriff. How are things in Tanapa Junction? Keeping the peace?" "Trying to," he replied. "Though I admit, it's been quieter since you settled in at the Ellis place. No more confrontations with mining company men." "I've been on my best behavior," she assured him with a touch of humor. He studied her for a moment, his expression softening. "You look well, Miss Ackerman." "Country life agrees with you." Vanessa felt a faint blush warm her cheeks at his direct gaze. "Thank you. I've found the air here considerably fresher than at finishing school." "I imagine so." He hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. "The town's holding a dance this Saturday at the schoolhouse. Nothing fancy, just a social gathering, I thought. That is, if you're not busy with the Ellis children, perhaps you might like to attend." The unexpected invitation caught Vanessa off guard. Was the sheriff asking to escort her, or merely informing her of a town event? Either way, the prospect of an evening's entertainment was appealing after weeks of work. "I believe Mrs. Ellis mentioned something about it," she replied carefully. "She suggested I might enjoy the opportunity to meet more townspeople." Sheriff Oakley nodded, seeming relieved. "It's a good way to get acquainted with folks. I could escort you if you'd like." So he was asking. Vanessa felt that flutter in her chest again. "That would be lovely, Sheriff." "Thank you, Isaac," he said. "If we're attending a dance together, you might as well use my given name." "Isaac," she repeated, testing the familiarity. "Then you must call me Vanessa." James, who had been following the exchange with the keen interest of a child who senses adult dynamics at play, tugged at Vanessa's skirt. "Can we go now? Ma's waiting for the sugar." "Of course, James," she replied, then smiled at Isaac. "Until Saturday, then." "Until Saturday," he confirmed, touching the brim of his hat before continuing on his way. As Vanessa and James resumed their walk to the Ellis home, the boy looked up at her with curious eyes. "Do you like the sheriff, Miss Ackerman?" "He seems to be a good man," she answered diplomatically. James nodded sagely. "Pa says he's the best sheriff the county's ever had. He goes after outlaws all by himself sometimes." "Is that so?" Vanessa tried to sound merely interested rather than concerned. "Uh-huh. One time, he tracked a bank robber all the way to the mountains and brought him back tied to his horse." Vanessa wasn't sure if the tale was true or embellished by a child's imagination, but it painted a more complex picture of the man she'd agreed to attend the dance with. Sheriff Isaac Oakley clearly had depth she had yet to fathom. When Saturday evening arrived, Vanessa found herself unusually nervous as she prepared for the dance. Clara had lent her a pretty blue dress that, with some quick alterations, fit her well enough for an informal gathering. She pinned her auburn hair in a simple but elegant style and dabbed a touch of rose water behind her ears, a small luxury she'd brought from her former life. "You look beautiful," Clara declared when Vanessa descended the stairs. "Doesn't she, William, Doctor?" Ellis glanced up from his medical journal and smiled kindly. "Indeed. Sheriff Oakley is a fortunate man this evening." "It's just a town dance," Vanessa demurred, though secretly pleased by their approval. Clara exchanged a knowing look with her husband. "Of course it is, dear." A knock at the door announced Isaac's arrival. Vanessa's breath caught slightly when she saw him standing on the porch. Gone was the dusty sheriff's uniform, replaced by clean black trousers, a crisp white shirt, and a dark waistcoat. His hair was neatly combed, though a rebellious lock still curled over his forehead. "Evening, Doc, Mrs. Ellis," he greeted them, then his eyes found Vanessa. "Miss Ackerman, you look. That is, blue suits you very well. Thank you," she replied, pleased by his evident appreciation. "You're quite presentable yourself, Sheriff." A smile touched his lips. "Isaac, remember." "Isaac," she amended, accepting the arm he offered. The walk to the schoolhouse was pleasant, the evening air cool after the day's heat. Lanterns had been strung across the schoolyard, casting a warm glow over the gathering. Inside, benches had been pushed to the walls to create a dance floor, and a small group of musicians, a fiddler, a guitarist, and a man with a harmonica were setting up in the corner. "It's not exactly the grand balls you're probably used to," Isaac remarked as they entered. "You'd be surprised at what I'm used to," Vanessa replied. "My father may be wealthy, but I grew up attending county fairs and harvest dances." This seemed to surprise him. "I had you pegged for high society." "Half right," she admitted. "My mother was from a prominent San Francisco family. My father was a miner who struck it rich and managed his fortune wisely. I've had one foot in each world my whole life." Before he could respond, they were approached by a middle-aged couple Vanessa recognized from church. "Sheriff," the man greeted them. "And Miss Ackerman, isn't it? Henry Miller, and this is my wife, Dorothy. We run the feed store." "Pleased to meet you properly," Vanessa smiled, accepting Dorothy's enthusiastic handshake. "We've heard wonderful things about you from Clara Ellis," Dorothy gushed. "She says you've worked miracles with little George's tantrums." "Hardly miracles," Vanessa demurred. "Just patience and a few distractions." As the music began, more people approached to introduce themselves. Vanessa was surprised to find the townspeople so welcoming, having expected more suspicion toward a newcomer. By the time the first dance was called, she'd met the baker, the telegraph operator, the school teacher, and at least a dozen others whose names blurred together. "May I have this dance?" Isaac asked as the fiddler began a lively reel. Vanessa accepted with a smile, allowing him to lead her onto the floor. He was a surprisingly graceful dancer, guiding her through the steps with confidence. As they moved together, she found herself relaxing, enjoying the simple pleasure of music and movement. "You dance well for a lawman," she remarked during a pause in the pattern. "My mother insisted all her boys learn. Said a man who can dance is a man who can court properly." Wise woman. His hand was warm against her waist as they turned. Would have liked you, I think." The casual comment, implying his mother would have approved of her as a potential match for her son, sent a ripple of awareness through Vanessa. They had known each other barely 3 weeks, yet there was an undeniable connection between them, a sense of understanding that went beyond mere acquaintance. The evening progressed pleasantly, with Vanessa accepting dances from several of the town's men while Isaac fulfilled his social obligations by partnering various ladies. Whenever they were separated, Vanessa found her eyes drifting to his tall figure and more than once caught him watching her as well. During a break in the dancing, Isaac brought her a cup of punch and led her to a quiet corner. "Enjoying yourself, very much," she admitted. "The people here are kinder than I expected." "Tanapa's a good community," he said, pride evident in his voice. "Folks look out for each other. It's why I settled here after the war." "You fought?" Vanessa asked, realizing how little she knew of his past. He nodded, his expression momentarily distant. "Union cavalry, enlisted in '63, fought till Appomattox. You were young. 18 when I joined up. Felt a lot older by the time it ended." He shook off the memories visibly. "Came west looking for something different. Found this place needing a sheriff and figured I could do some good." "And have you? Done good?" Isaac considered the question seriously. I try. Town's peaceful, mostly. Have to ride out after troublemakers now and then, but nothing like during the early mining days. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of two men Vanessa hadn't met before, well-dressed gentlemen who carried themselves with the confidence of wealth and position. Sheriff Oakley, the older of the two, greeted him. Quite the gathering tonight. Isaac's posture stiffened slightly, though his expression remained polite. Mr. Hargrove, Mr. Simmons, didn't expect to see you at our humble town dance. Even mining executives enjoy a little local color now and then, Hargrove replied, his gaze shifting to Vanessa. And who is this lovely lady? Isaac performed the introductions. Miss Vanessa Ackerman, this is Edward Hargrove, president of the Silver Creek Mining Company, and his associate, Thomas Simmons. Charmed, Hargrove said, taking Vanessa's hand and bowing over it with practiced gallantry. You must be new to our little community. I make it a point to know all the beautiful women in the county. Vanessa withdrew her hand as soon as politeness allowed. There was something in Hargrove's manner that reminded her uncomfortably of Charles Pemberton, the same sense of entitlement, the same assessing gaze that saw women as acquisitions rather than people. Miss Ackerman is employed by Dr. Ellis and his wife, Isaac explained, his tone neutral but his stance protective. A governess? How quaint. Hargrove's smile didn't reach his eyes. Well, Miss Ackerman, if you ever tire of tending to other people's children, the mining company is always looking for suitable young ladies to work in our offices. The pay is considerably better. Thank you, but I'm quite content with my current position, Vanessa replied coolly. Hargrove exchanged a look with Simmons that Vanessa couldn't interpret. As you wish. Though I should warn you, associating too closely with our good sheriff here can be hazardous to one's reputation. He has a habit of making powerful enemies. Isaac's jaw tightened. Is there something you want to say directly to me, Hargrove? The mining executive smiled thinly. Not at all, Sheriff. Just making conversation. He turned back to Vanessa with a small bow. Perhaps I'll claim a dance later, Miss Ackerman. Good evening to you both. As the men walked away, Vanessa turned to Isaac with raised eyebrows. I sense there's history there. You could say that, he replied grimly. Hargrove's company has been trying to buy up land around here for years. Some of their methods aren't exactly ethical, and I've interfered a time or two. The men I confronted my first day in town, they work for him, Isaac nodded. Reynolds and Doyle, two of his persuaders, they convince reluctant landowners to sell. His expression darkened, usually through intimidation. And you stop them, when I can prove something. He sighed. Problem is, Hargrove's careful, keeps his hands clean while his men do the dirty work. The music began again, a slower waltz this time. Isaac offered his hand. Would you care to dance, or has all this talk of mining politics ruined your evening? Vanessa placed her hand in his, feeling the calluses on his palm. It takes more than that to ruin my evening, Sheriff. They moved onto the dance floor, his arm circling her waist with proper decorum while still drawing her closer than the previous dances had required. As they turned in time to the music, Vanessa felt the tensions of the encounter with Hargrove melting away, replaced by a pleasant warmth that spread through her body. Thank you for inviting me tonight, she said softly. Thank you for accepting, he replied, his blue eyes holding hers. I've been wanting to spend time with you since that first day, when you stood up to those men with nothing but your parasol and determination. It seems to be a habit of mine, she admitted, standing up when I should probably stand down. Don't ever change that, he said, his voice low and earnest. It's rare to find someone willing to put themselves at risk for what's right. That day, when I saw you confronting Reynolds and Doyle, I thought to myself, That's exactly who I want beside me." The simple declaration, spoken without pretense or calculation, touched Vanessa deeply. In her experience, men preferred women who were decorative and compliant, not those who caused scenes and disrupted the social order. Yet here was Isaac Oakley, admiring the very quality that had led to her expulsion and exile. "You barely know me," she pointed out, though her heart had quickened at his words. "I know enough," he replied. "I know you defend those who need defending. I know you're smart and determined. I know the Ellis children adore you." He smiled slightly. "And I know I've thought about you every day since you arrived in Tanapa Junction." The music ended before Vanessa could formulate a response, leaving them standing close together as the other dancers applauded the musicians. For a moment, they remained still, caught in the intimacy of the moment. Then reality intruded in the form of Dorothy Miller, who approached with a plate of cookies, breaking the spell. "You must try these, Miss Ackerman, my special recipe." The remainder of the evening passed in a pleasant blur of dancing, conversation, and the simple joy of being part of a community celebration. When it came time to leave, Isaac offered his arm for the walk back to the Ellis home. The night had grown cooler and stars blanketed the vast Nevada sky above them. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the sounds of the dance fading behind them. Finally, Vanessa spoke. "Did you mean what you said earlier, about wanting me beside you?" Isaac stopped walking, turning to face her in the moonlight. "I did. I know it's forward of me. We haven't known each other long, but—" He hesitated, seemingly searching for words. "I've never met anyone quite like you, Vanessa Ackerman." She studied his face, the earnest expression in his eyes. "I've never met anyone quite like you either, Isaac Oakley." Slowly, giving her every opportunity to withdraw, he leaned forward. His lips met hers in a gentle kiss that nonetheless sent a current of warmth through her entire body. His hand came up to cup her cheek, the touch reverent and careful. When they parted, Vanessa's heart was racing. It wasn't her first kiss, but it was perhaps the first that had meant something beyond a stolen moment at a social gathering or a courting ritual. "I'd like to call on you properly," Isaac said quietly. "With the Ellis's permission, of course." Vanessa smiled, a sense of rightness settling over her. "I'd like that very much." As they continued their walk to the Ellis home, hands now entwined, Vanessa reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. If she hadn't been expelled for defending Eliza, she would never have come to Tanapa Junction, never have met Isaac. Perhaps there was something to be said for standing up when it would be easier to stand down after all. Over the next few weeks, Isaac became a regular visitor at the Ellis household. He would arrive in the evenings, sometimes bearing small gifts, a ribbon for Vanessa's hair, candies for the children, or a book he thought she might enjoy. They would sit on the porch after the children were in bed, talking until the stars were thick overhead, learning each other's histories and hopes. Vanessa learned that Isaac was the middle of 3 brothers, raised on a small farm in Ohio. His father had died when he was 12, leaving his mother to manage alone until the boys were old enough to take over. His older brother still ran the family farm, while his younger brother had become a lawyer in Denver. In turn, she told him about her childhood in Sacramento, about her mother's death when she was 16, and about her complicated relationship with her father, a man who loved her but couldn't understand her independent spirit. "Have you written to him?" Isaac asked one evening as they sat on the Ellis's porch swing. "To let him know you're safe," Vanessa sighed, leaning slightly against his shoulder. "I sent a telegram after I found employment, just the basics that I'm well and working as a governess." And his response? "He wants me to come home, says it's not proper for his daughter to be working as a servant." Isaac was quiet for a moment. "Do you want to go back?" "No," she said without hesitation. "There's nothing for me there except a life of constraints and expectations I can't meet. My father would have me married to some business associate within months." His arm tightened around her shoulders. "Then you'll stay in Tanapa." It wasn't quite a question, but Vanessa answered anyway. "Yes, I'll stay." The days settled into a pleasant pattern. Vanessa's work with the Ellis children remained fulfilling, and her growing relationship with Isaac brought a joy she hadn't expected to find in the small frontier town. The only shadow on her contentment was the occasional reminder of the tension between Isaac and the mining company. Edward Hargrove made a point of tipping his hat to Vanessa whenever their paths crossed in town, his politeness never quite masking the calculating look in his eyes. Reynolds and Doyle, the men she had confronted on her first day, made themselves scarce when she was around, but she sometimes felt their watching eyes when she walked through town. One afternoon in late June, nearly 2 months after her arrival in Tanapa Junction, Vanessa was returning from the mercantile with the twins when she noticed unusual activity at the sheriff's office. Several men on horseback were gathered outside, and Isaac stood on the boardwalk in conversation with them. "Those are Pass's men," Elizabeth explained, following Vanessa's gaze. "They help Sheriff Oakley catch bad men." "Is there trouble?" Vanessa asked, concern rising. Emily nodded solemnly. "Ma says the stagecoach got robbed yesterday. They took all the money the bank was sending." Vanessa quickened their pace to the Ellis home, her mind racing. Isaac hadn't mentioned anything about a stagecoach robbery the previous evening when he'd called. After settling the twins with a puzzle, she sought out Clara in the kitchen. "Is it true about the stagecoach robbery?" Clara looked up from the bread dough she was kneading, her expression worried. "News travels fast." "Yes, it happened yesterday afternoon, about 10 miles outside of town. The driver was injured and the guard was killed. Isaac didn't say anything when he visited last night. He probably didn't want to worry you," Clara said, dusting flour from her hands. "William says he's organizing a posse to go after the robbers. They think it was the Henderson gang." Vanessa's stomach clenched. "Are they dangerous?" 3 brothers who have been terrorizing stage lines across Nevada and Utah, Clara confirmed grimly. "They've killed before." Worry gnawed at Vanessa throughout the afternoon as she went through the motions of her usual routine. When dinner time came and went with no sign of Isaac, her concern deepened. It wasn't unusual for him to miss an evening visit due to his duties, but given what she now knew, his absence was unsettling. After helping Clara put the children to bed, Vanessa sat on the porch, watching the darkening street for any sign of Isaac or the posse returning. The summer night was warm, cicadas singing in the trees around the house. "He'll be all right," Clara said softly, joining her with 2 glasses of lemonade. "Isaac knows what he's doing." "He's going after killers," Vanessa replied, accepting the drink with a grateful nod. "How can that be anything but dangerous?" Clara settled beside her on the porch swing. "It's who he is, Vanessa. Being sheriff isn't just a job for Isaac, it's a calling. He believes in justice and protecting people who can't protect themselves." "I understand that," Vanessa sighed. "It's one of the things I admire most about him. I just wish it didn't involve risking his life." "Love someone for who they are, and you have to accept the parts that frighten you along with those that comfort you," Clara said wisely. "William rides out in all weather to tend patients with contagious diseases. I worry each time, but I wouldn't change who he is." Vanessa didn't correct Clara's casual reference to love, though the words sent a flutter through her chest. Was that what she felt for Isaac? They had known each other such a short time, yet she couldn't deny the depth of her feelings. "How did you know?" she asked suddenly. "With Dr. Ellis." "How did you know he was the one?" Clara smiled, understanding the question beneath the question. It wasn't one grand moment. It was 100 small ones. The way he remembered my favorite flower. How he listened when I spoke, truly listened. The fact that when I pictured my future, his face was always there. She patted Vanessa's hand. When you know, you know. Vanessa nodded, thinking of Isaac's steady presence, his quiet strength, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled at her. Perhaps she did know after all. It was past midnight when the sound of horses drew Vanessa from her fitful sleep. She hurried to the window, peering out to see riders moving slowly down the main street. In the dim light of the moon, she could make out Isaac's tall figure at the head of the group. Relief flooded through her, followed quickly by the desire to go to him. But propriety held her back. It would cause talk if she were seen rushing to the sheriff's office in her nightclothes, no matter how innocent her intentions. Instead, she returned to bed, resolving to seek him out in the morning. Sleep came easier now that she knew he had returned safely. The next morning, Vanessa rose early and dressed with particular care. After helping Clara prepare breakfast for the children, she asked for permission to go into town. Of course, Clara smiled knowingly. Take your time. The children can manage their reading lessons on their own this morning. The sheriff's office was quiet when Vanessa arrived, the door ajar. She knocked softly and entered to find Isaac at his desk, head bent over paperwork. He looked up at her entrance, exhaustion evident in the shadows beneath his eyes, but a smile transformed his face when he recognized her. "Vanessa," he said, rising from his chair, "this is a pleasant surprise." "I heard about the stagecoach robbery," she said, moving toward him, "and the posse. I was worried." His expression softened. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you beforehand. Everything happened so quickly." "Did you catch them?" "The Henderson gang," a shadow crossed his face. "Two of them. The third brother got away, but we recovered most of the money." He gestured to a chair. "Please sit. I've been wanting to talk to you about something." Vanessa sat, noting the seriousness in his tone. "What is it?" Isaac leaned against his desk, facing her. "Hargrove came to see me this morning. The mining company has purchased the old Carson property, that stretch of land between town and the creek." "I'm not sure I understand the significance," Vanessa said carefully. "They plan to divert the creek to support their mining operation," Isaac explained. "If they do, it will cut off water access for half the small ranchers in the area. Those families will be forced to sell out." "Can they legally do that?" "The water rights are complicated. There's a hearing next month in the county seat." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Vanessa had come to recognize as a sign of frustration. "Hargrove made it clear that if I testify on behalf of the ranchers, there could be consequences." Vanessa straightened. "He threatened you." "Not in so many words. Just mentioned that a sheriff needs the support of the community's leading businessmen, and that my personal associations might be influenced by my professional decisions." The implication was clear. "He meant me." Isaac nodded grimly. "He knows about us. Suggested that if anything were to happen to you, it would be a tragedy." Fear and anger warred within Vanessa. "So he threatened me to control you." "I won't let him hurt you," Isaac said fiercely. "I've already spoken to Dr. Ellis about having someone stay at the house when I'm not around, just as a precaution." "I'm not afraid," Vanessa insisted, though that wasn't entirely true. "And I won't be used as leverage against you doing what's right." Isaac moved to kneel before her chair, taking her hands in his. "I need you to be careful, Vanessa. Hargrove isn't someone who makes idle threats." The concern in his eyes touched her deeply. "I will be, but you need to promise me something in return. Anything. Don't compromise who you are because of me. Don't let Hargrove win by using me against you." Isaac's gaze was steady. "I promise." He hesitated, then continued. There's something else I want to discuss with you, something I've been thinking about for a while now. Vanessa's heart quickened. Yes, I had planned to do this differently, a proper dinner, perhaps, or a picnic by the creek. He smiled ruefully. But life has a way of changing our plans. He took a deep breath. Vanessa Ackerman, I love you. I know we haven't known each other long, but I'm as certain of this as I've ever been of anything. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? The words hung in the air between them, simple and profound. Vanessa felt a surge of emotion so strong it momentarily robbed her of speech. This man, this good and honorable man, loved her not despite her willingness to stand up for what was right, but because of it. Yes, she whispered, then more strongly, yes, Isaac, I will marry you. His face lit with joy, and he pulled her to her feet and into his arms. Their kiss was deeper than their previous ones, filled with promise and newfound certainty. When they parted, Isaac reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. I've been carrying this for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. He tipped a delicate gold ring with a small pearl into his palm. It was my mother's. I'd be honored if you'd wear it. It's beautiful, Vanessa murmured as he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if meant for her all along. Their private celebration was interrupted by the door swinging open. Deputy Taylor, a young man barely out of his teens, entered, then stopped short at the scene before him. "Begging your pardon, Sheriff," he stammered. "Didn't know you had company." Isaac kept his arm around Vanessa's waist. "It's all right, Taylor. In fact, you're the first to hear our news. Miss Ackerman has agreed to become Mrs. Oakley." The deputy's face broke into a grin. "Well, that's just fine, sir. Congratulations to you both." He pumped Isaac's hand enthusiastically, then tipped his hat to Vanessa. "Mrs. Ellis sent me to fetch you, Miss Ackerman. Said something about the twins getting into the flour bin." Vanessa laughed, imagining the chaos. "I should go." "We'll talk more later. Count on it," Isaac replied, pressing a quick kiss to her forehead. "Dinner tonight. We can tell the Ellises our news." With a nod and a smile that felt too small to contain her happiness, Vanessa departed, the deputy trailing behind her like an enthusiastic puppy. "The whole town'll be pleased about this, miss," Taylor confided as they walked. "Sheriff's the most respected man in the county. Folks have been hoping he'd settle down with the right lady." "Have they indeed?" Vanessa asked, amused. "Oh yes, madam. There's even been a betting pool at the Silver Dollar about when he'd popped the question. I reckon Mr. Collins at the Mercantile just won himself a tidy sum." Vanessa shook her head, laughing. Small-town life had its drawbacks, but the sense of community, of belonging to something larger than oneself, was a compensation she had come to value. As expected, the twins had indeed created a disaster in the kitchen, and Vanessa spent the next hour helping Clara restore order. She kept her news to herself, wanting Isaac to be present when they shared it with the Ellis family. That evening, the announcement was met with delighted congratulations from Clara and William, and varying degrees of excitement from the children, from James's solemn handshake to little George's insistence that he would be the one to carry the rings at the wedding. "Have you set a date?" Clara asked as they sat around the dining table, celebrating with a bottle of wine Dr. Ellis had been saving for a special occasion. Isaac looked to Vanessa. "We haven't discussed it yet." "I see no reason to wait," Vanessa said decisively. "A simple ceremony would suit me fine." "August, then," Isaac suggested. "That would give us time to send for my brothers and perhaps your father if you wish." Vanessa hesitated. The thought of inviting her father brought a mix of emotions. Would he come? Would he approve? Did his approval even matter to her anymore? "I'll write to him," she decided. He should have the opportunity to attend, at least. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. The news of their engagement spread through Tonopah Junction like wildfire, bringing a stream of well-wishers and gifts to both the Ellis home and the sheriff's office. The town's response was overwhelmingly positive, with the notable exception of Edward Hargrove and his associates, who maintained a cold distance. Vanessa wrote to her father, a careful letter that explained her situation without apology. She told him about Isaac, his character, his position in the community, and her love for him. She invited him to attend the wedding, scheduled for the third Saturday in August, but made it clear that while his presence would be welcomed, his approval was not required. His response came by telegraph a week later. "Will attend. Stop bringing mother's jewelry. Stop, father." The brevity was typical of Jonathan Ackerman, a man more comfortable with ledgers than emotional expression. Still, his agreement to come was more than Vanessa had dared hope for. As the wedding day approached, the tension between Isaac and the mining company intensified. The hearing about the water rights was scheduled for the week after the wedding, and Hargrove made no secret of his displeasure at Isaac's support for the ranchers. "He's been talking to Judge Wilson," Isaac told Vanessa one evening as they walked along the creek that had become the center of the dispute, "trying to influence him before the hearing." "Is that legal?" Vanessa asked, watching the water flow over smooth stones, sunlight dancing on its surface. "Not technically illegal, just unethical," Isaac sighed. "Wilson's a fair man, but he's not immune to pressure. Hargrove has been hinting that the mining company might relocate their headquarters to the county seat, bringing jobs and money." Vanessa squeezed his hand. "What can we do?" "I've been gathering testimonials from the ranchers, documenting how long they've been using the creek and how diverting it would affect their livelihoods. The law should be on their side if it's applied fairly. And if it's not," Isaac's expression was grim, "then we appeal. Fight through the courts. It would be a long battle, and some of these families don't have the resources to last that long." Vanessa considered the situation. What about public opinion, if enough people understood what was at stake? "Hargrove controls the county newspaper," Isaac pointed out. "They won't print anything against the company's interests." An idea began to form in Vanessa's mind. What about a town meeting? A public forum where the ranchers could speak directly to their neighbors? Isaac looked at her with growing interest. That could work. If the townspeople understood the implications, they might put pressure on the judge and county commissioners. "The schoolhouse could host it," Vanessa continued, warming to the plan. "We could invite everyone, not just from Tonopah Junction but from the surrounding areas too." A slow smile spread across Isaac's face. "This is why I love you, Vanessa Ackerman. You see solutions where others see only problems." She returned his smile, pleased by both the compliment and the casual declaration of love. "So we'll do it. The sooner the better, before Hargrove can organize opposition." They set the meeting for the following Thursday evening, spreading word through the community by every means available. Isaac spoke to the ranchers directly, while Vanessa enlisted the help of Clara Ellis and other respected women to reach the families in town. The response exceeded their expectations. By the time the meeting began, the schoolhouse was packed to capacity, with people standing along the walls and peering through the windows from outside. Isaac had invited Judge Wilson as well, though they weren't certain he would attend. Vanessa sat in the front row as Isaac called the meeting to order, explaining the situation in clear, unambiguous terms. He then invited several of the affected ranchers to speak, men and women who described generations of family history tied to the land and water that Hargrove's company sought to control. The mood in the room was shifting from curious to concerned when the door swung open, and Edward Hargrove entered, flanked by Thomas Simmons and several other men in expensive suits. The crowd parted reluctantly to let them through. "Sheriff Oakley," Hargrove called out, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. "How convenient to find so many of our neighbors gathered. I hope you don't mind if we join the discussion." Isaac's expression remained neutral. "This is a public meeting, Mr. Hargrove. Everyone is welcome to participate." Hargrove made his way to the front of the room, his manner confident bordering on arrogant. "I understand there are concerns about the Silver Creek Mining Company's recent land acquisitions and our plans for water usage. I'd like to address those concerns directly." For the next 20 minutes, Hargrove presented the company's side with smooth eloquence. He spoke of jobs and progress, of technological advancements that would benefit the entire region. He promised that any disruption to water access would be temporary and compensated fairly. It was a masterful performance, and Vanessa could see some of the townspeople nodding along, swayed by his rhetoric and promises of prosperity. When he finished, there was a smattering of applause. Isaac remained calm, thanking Hargrove for his perspective before inviting questions from the audience. The first few were easily fielded by Hargrove, until an elderly rancher named Peterson stood up. "Mr. Hargrove," he said, his voice wavering but determined, "your company made similar promises to my cousin in Montana. Said they'd restore the creek after they were done mining. That was 5 years ago, and his land is still dry as dust. His cattle died, and he lost everything." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Hargrove's smile tightened. "I can't speak to operations in other territories, Mr. Peterson. Different management, different circumstances." Another voice called out from the back. "What about the Jenkins family over in Ruby Valley? Your company bought the water rights there last year, and now they're charging farmers more than they can afford just to irrigate their crops." The questions continued, increasingly specific and damaging to Hargrove's narrative. Vanessa realized with growing admiration that Isaac had done more preparation than he'd let on, ensuring that people with first-hand knowledge of the company's tactics in other areas were present and willing to speak. Hargrove's composure began to crack. "These are isolated incidents, misunderstandings. Is it a misunderstanding that your men threatened Jacob Miller when he wouldn't sell?" A woman's voice challenged. Martha Wilson, the hotel manager who had been harassed the day Vanessa arrived, stood up defiantly. "My brother's arm was broken in an accident the day after he refused your offer." The room erupted in angry voices. Isaac raised his hands for quiet, which came slowly. "These are serious allegations, Mr. Hargrove. Would you care to respond?" Hargrove's face had darkened with anger. "I don't have to justify my company's legal business practices to a room full of backward farmers and a sheriff who's clearly biased against progress." He turned to the crowd. "The Silver Creek Mining Company has invested thousands of dollars in this county. We provide jobs, revenue, and opportunities. If we're not welcome here, there are plenty of other communities that would appreciate what we bring to the table." The threat hung in the air, and Vanessa held her breath. This was the moment that would determine the meeting's outcome. Would the people choose immediate economic benefit, or would they stand for the long-term welfare of their neighbors? A moment of tense silence was broken by Judge Wilson, who had been observing silently from a corner of the room. The elderly jurist rose to his feet, commanding attention through his position rather than volume. "Mr. Hargrove," he said mildly, "I've heard threats in my courtroom before, though they're usually not delivered so publicly or with such fine clothing." A ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. "I came here tonight to listen, and I've heard enough to be concerned about your company's methods and intentions." Hargrove's expression froze. "Judge Wilson, I assure you, save your assurances for the hearing," Wilson interrupted. where I will expect documented evidence, not promises." He looked around the room. "Thank you, Sheriff Oakley, for organizing this enlightening discussion. I believe I've heard enough to inform my consideration of the water rights case." With that, the judge made his way toward the door, the crowd parting respectfully. As he passed Hargrove, he paused. "A word of advice, young man. Threats may work in mining camps, but they tend to have the opposite effect in established communities. Good evening." The meeting concluded shortly after, with Isaac thanking everyone for their attendance and participation. Hargrove and his entourage departed without further comment, their expressions stormy. As the schoolhouse emptied, Vanessa approached Isaac, pride swelling in her chest. "That went better than we could have hoped," he smiled, though tension still lined his face. Judge Wilson's presence was unexpected. Having him hear those testimonies firsthand could make all the difference at the hearing. Hargrove looked furious. Isaac's expression sobered. "He is. And that makes him dangerous." He took her hand. "I want you to stay close to the Ellis house until after the hearing. Don't go anywhere alone." Vanessa wanted to protest, but recognized the genuine concern in his eyes. "All right, but only until the hearing is resolved." The days leading up to their wedding were overshadowed by the tension with the mining company. Isaac doubled the night patrols in town and made a point of checking on the outlying ranches daily. Reynolds and Doyle were seen frequently in the saloon, their manner suggesting they were waiting for instructions. 2 days before the wedding, Vanessa's father arrived on the afternoon stagecoach. Jonathan Ackerman was a tall, imposing man with iron-gray hair and a bearing that spoke of self-made success. Vanessa met him at the stagecoach stop, uncertain of his reception. "Father," she greeted him formally, fighting the urge to fidget like a schoolgirl. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to her surprise, he stepped forward and embraced her. "You look well, Vanessa. Country air agrees with you." Startled by the unexpected warmth, she returned the embrace. "Thank you for coming." "Did you think I would miss my only daughter's wedding?" He released her, holding her at arm's length. "Though I admit, when I received your letter I was concerned. A sheriff in a mining town is not what I envisioned for you." "Tonopah Junction is more than just a mining town," Vanessa said defensively. "And Isaac is a good man." Jonathan nodded thoughtfully. "So your letter suggested. I look forward to meeting him and forming my own opinion." He gestured to his luggage. "Now, where am I staying?" "Not with you and your employer, I hope. That would hardly be appropriate." "I've arranged a room for you at the Juniper Hotel," Vanessa explained, signaling to a boy waiting nearby to help with the bags. "It's the finest accommodation in town." Her father snorted. "That's not saying much, from what I can see." Despite his gruff manner, Vanessa sensed an underlying desire to reconnect. As they walked to the hotel, he asked questions about her life in Tonopah Junction, her work with the Ellis children, her impressions of the community, and most significantly, her relationship with Isaac. "And you're certain about this marriage?" he asked as they reached the hotel. "It's not too late to change your mind. You could return to Sacramento with me after the ceremony if you find frontier life isn't to your taste." Vanessa shook her head firmly. "I'm certain, Father, I love Isaac and I've found purpose here." Jonathan sighed. "Your mother was the same way once her mind was made up. There was no swaying her." A hint of a smile softened his features. "She would be proud of you, I think, standing up for yourself, finding your own path." The unexpected approval brought tears to Vanessa's eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." "Don't get sentimental on me now," her father grumbled, though his eyes were suspiciously bright as well. "When do I meet this sheriff of yours?" "Tonight. We're having dinner at the Ellis home at 7. Jonathan nodded briskly. "I'll be there. And Vanessa? He hesitated, then continued. I brought your mother's pearls. I thought you might want to wear them for the wedding. The dinner that evening went better than Vanessa had dared hope. Isaac and her father seemed to take each other's measure and find mutual respect, if not immediate warmth. By the end of the meal, they were engaged in a detailed discussion of Nevada territorial law and the challenges of enforcing it in remote communities. Your father is an interesting man, Isaac commented as they walked back to town afterward, Jonathan having remained at the Ellis home to enjoy a brandy with Dr. Ellis. Not at all what I expected from your descriptions. He's different here, Vanessa admitted. At home, he's always the businessman, formal, demanding. Here, he seems more human. Perhaps seeing you happy has changed his perspective. Vanessa considered this. Perhaps. Or maybe he's finally accepting that I'm not the proper society daughter he wanted. Isaac took her hand, squeezing it gently. His loss was my gain. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the August sun warming the Nevada landscape to golden perfection. The ceremony was to be held in the town church at 4 o'clock, followed by a celebration in the schoolyard, where tables and decorations had been set up by volunteer committees of townswomen. Vanessa spent the morning with Clara and the Ellis girls, who were to be her attendants. Her wedding dress was simple but elegant, a cream-colored satin with delicate lace trim that Clara had helped her alter from a gown ordered from a catalog. Around her neck lay her mother's pearls, cool against her skin. You look beautiful, Clara declared as she arranged Vanessa's hair in an intricate style adorned with small white flowers. Isaac won't know what hit him. A knock at the bedroom door interrupted them. Is it decent for a father to enter? Jonathan called. Come in, Mr. Ackerman, Clara replied, making a final adjustment to Vanessa's hair before stepping back. Jonathan entered, dressed in his finest suit, and stopped short at the sight of his daughter. For a moment, his composure slipped, revealing a depth of emotion that Vanessa had rarely witnessed. You are the image of your mother, he said softly. She wore those same pearls on our wedding day. I wish she could be here, Vanessa replied, her throat tight with emotion. So do I. Jonathan cleared his throat. I have something for you, a wedding gift. He withdrew a small leather portfolio from his jacket. This might not be the most romantic present, but I think you'll appreciate its significance. Curious, Vanessa opened the portfolio to find legal documents inside. As she read the first page, her eyes widened. Father, this is ownership of the land adjacent to the creek just north of town, he confirmed. I purchased it yesterday from a Mr. Carson who was quite eager to sell once I named my price. Vanessa looked up in shock. But this is the property Hargrove wanted, the one that would allow him to control the water. Jonathan nodded, a satisfied gleam in his eye. Precisely. I may be just a businessman, but I recognize a land grab when I see one. And I don't appreciate anyone threatening my daughter or her chosen husband. He tapped the document. The deed is in both your names, yours and Isaac's. You can decide what to do with it together. Overwhelmed, Vanessa embraced her father tightly. Thank you. This means more than I can say. He patted her back awkwardly. Yes, well, consider it my blessing on your marriage. He stepped back, adjusting his tie. Now I believe we have a ceremony to attend. Your sheriff is probably wondering if you've changed your mind. The church was filled to capacity when Vanessa walked down the aisle on her father's arm. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over the assembled townspeople, who had come to witness the union of their sheriff and the woman who had so quickly become part of their community. Isaac waited at the altar, his expression transforming from nervous anticipation to awe as she approached. Beside him stood his brothers, who had arrived from Ohio and Denver just the day before. The resemblance between the three Oakley men was striking, though Isaac remained the most handsome in Vanessa's admittedly biased opinion. The ceremony itself was simple and heartfelt. They exchanged traditional vows, their voices steady despite the emotion evident in both their faces. When Isaac slipped a gold band onto her finger to join her engagement ring, his hands were gentle but sure. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. "You may kiss your bride." Isaac's kiss was tender, but held a promise of deeper passion to come, causing a few good-natured cheers from the congregation. As they turned to face their friends and family, now joined as husband and wife, Vanessa felt a sense of rightness that confirmed every decision that had led her to this moment. The celebration afterward was joyous, with music, dancing, and more food than the entire town could possibly consume. Conspicuously absent were Edward Hargrove and his associates, though no one seemed to mourn their lack of attendance. As the evening progressed, Isaac drew Vanessa aside, leading her to a quiet corner of the schoolyard. "I have something to show you," he said, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. Your father wasn't the only one with a surprise. Curious, Vanessa unfolded the document. It was a deed to a piece of land on the outskirts of town, with both their names listed as owners. "I purchased it last month," Isaac explained. "There's a small house already built, nothing fancy but solid. And enough land for a garden, maybe some chickens." He looked suddenly uncertain. "If you don't like it, we can look for something else. I just thought." Vanessa silenced him with a kiss. "It's perfect, our own home." Relief and happiness spread across his face. "We can move in tomorrow if you'd like. It's all ready. I've been working on it in my spare time." "Tomorrow," she agreed, her heart full. Then she remembered her own news. "I have something to show you as well." She retrieved her father's gift from where Clara had been keeping it safe. "It seems we're becoming quite the landowners." Isaac's expression as he read the deed to the Carson property shifted from confusion to understanding to disbelief. "Your father bought this, for us, and for the ranchers who depend on that water," Vanessa confirmed. "Hargrove can't divert the creek without access to this land." A slow smile spread across Isaac's face. That changes everything. "Father suggested we could create a legal trust to ensure the water rights are protected permanently," Vanessa explained. "Something that would outlast us, so future generations would be secure." Isaac shook his head in wonder. "Remind me never to underestimate Jonathan Ackerman, or his daughter for that matter." He pulled her close. "Have I told you today how much I love you, Mrs. Oakley?" The name, spoken for the first time, sent a thrill through her. "Not in the last hour, Sheriff Oakley. You've been neglectful." "Let me remedy that immediately," he murmured, lowering his lips to hers in a kiss that held both tenderness and passion. The water rights hearing the following week was anticlimactic. When Judge Wilson learned that the disputed property was now owned by Sheriff and Mrs. Oakley, with legal provisions being established to protect the rancher's access in perpetuity, he ruled quickly in favor of maintaining the existing water usage patterns. Edward Hargrove left town shortly afterward, the Silver Creek Mining Company redirecting its operations to more amenable territories. Reynolds, Doyle, and the other company men followed. Their departure met with quiet relief by the townspeople. Life settled into a new pattern for Vanessa and Isaac. Their home, a cozy four-room cabin with a wide porch and views of the distant mountains, became a place of warmth and love. Vanessa continued working with the Ellis children for a time, but as autumn turned to winter, she found herself with a new priority. "Are you certain?" Isaac asked, his face alight with wonder when she shared her suspicion that they would become parents in the spring. "Dr. Ellis confirmed it yesterday," Vanessa replied, her hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. He says late April or early May. Isaac gathered her into his arms, his joy palpable. A baby, our baby. The news spread quickly through the town, bringing a fresh wave of congratulations and gifts. Jonathan Ackerman, informed by telegram, responded with uncharacteristic effusiveness. Delighted, stop making arrangements to visit in spring, stop grandmother's cradle being shipped, stop father. The winter passed peacefully, with Isaac's duties as sheriff rarely taking him far from home. Vanessa busied herself preparing for the baby and establishing their household. They spent long evenings by the fire, talking about their child's future and the community they were building. In late April 1876, almost exactly a year after Vanessa had been expelled from Miss Harrington's academy, she gave birth to a healthy son they named William Jonathan Oakley. The delivery was long but uncomplicated, with Clara Ellis assisting Dr. Ellis throughout. "He has your eyes," Isaac murmured as he held his son for the first time, the baby's unfocused gaze a clear blue like his father's. "But I think that's your stubborn chin." "Poor child," Vanessa laughed softly, exhausted but radiant, "stubborn from both sides." Jonathan Ackerman arrived a week later, bearing gifts and a softened demeanor that suggested his role as grandfather suited him better than that of stern father ever had. He stayed for 2 weeks, bonding with his grandson and further cementing the reconciliation with his daughter. Before departing, he took Isaac aside for a private conversation. When her husband rejoined her on the porch, watching her father's carriage disappear down the road toward the stagecoach office, Vanessa raised a questioning eyebrow. "What did he say to you?" Isaac smiled, settling beside her on the swing and carefully adjusting the blanket around the sleeping infant in her arms. "He said I was a lucky man, which I already knew, and he asked if I would consider expanding our business interests beyond my sheriff's duties." "Business interests?" "Apparently, your father has investments in several stagecoach lines and is looking to improve security for mail and payroll transports." Isaac shrugged. "He thinks my experience would be valuable." "And what did you tell him?" "That my priority is my family and this community, but I'd consider advising him when my duties allow." He slipped an arm around her shoulders. "He also mentioned setting up a trust fund for William. I told him we'd discuss it together." Vanessa leaned into his embrace, their son nestled between them. "Look at us. Former finishing school failure and sheriff of a dusty frontier town, raising the grandson of a business magnate. Don't forget landowners and water rights defenders," Isaac added with a grin. "Not bad for a year's work." "Not bad at all," Vanessa agreed, lifting her face for his kiss. As the sun set over Tanapa Junction, casting long shadows across their porch and painting the Nevada sky in shades of gold and crimson, Vanessa reflected on the strange turns of fate that had brought her here. One act of defiance, punching Charles Pemberton to protect Eliza Morgan, had set her on a path she could never have imagined. She had lost a place at a prestigious academy, but gained a loving husband, a beautiful child, and a community that valued her for exactly who she was. Perhaps, she thought as Isaac's arm tightened around her, and William made a soft sound in his sleep, being expelled had been the best thing that ever happened to her. 5 years later, on a warm summer evening, Vanessa sat on that same porch swing, watching Isaac teaching their son to throw a lasso in the yard. William, now an energetic 5-year-old with his father's blue eyes and her auburn hair, was laughing with delight as the small rope circled above his head. Beside her in a cradle, their 3-month-old daughter Rebecca slept peacefully, one tiny fist curled against her cheek. The town of Tanapa Junction had grown in the intervening years, with new businesses along the main street and more families settling in the surrounding area. Isaac had been elected county sheriff 2 years prior, expanding his jurisdiction but keeping their home as his base. Vanessa divided her time between caring for their children, managing the trust that protected the creek water rights, and teaching part-time at the expanded school. Her father visited twice yearly, doting on his grandchildren and continuing to involve Isaac in his business ventures as a security consultant. "Ma, I did it," William called out as his small lasso settled around a fence post. "Did you see?" "I saw," Vanessa called back, smiling at his pride. "Well done." Isaac scooped the boy onto his shoulders, carrying him triumphantly toward the porch. "I believe this calls for some of your mother's apple cake. What do you think, Deputy William?" "Yes, please," the child agreed enthusiastically. As they came up the steps, Vanessa rose to meet them, accepting Isaac's kiss and William's excited hug. "Cake for successful cowboys only," she teased. "I suppose you qualify." Later, with the children asleep and the evening stretching peaceful before them, Isaac and Vanessa sat together on the porch, his arm around her shoulders and her head resting against him. "Happy?" he asked, a question he still posed regularly even after 5 years of marriage. "Completely," she answered truthfully. "You, more than I ever thought possible." He kissed the top of her head. "You know, I still think about that first day sometimes. You standing up to Reynolds and Doyle with nothing but determination and a parasol." Vanessa chuckled. "My signature move, apparently, standing up when I should stand down." "No," Isaac said seriously. "Standing up exactly when you should. It's what I love most about you." She turned to look at him, this man who had seen her strength as an asset rather than a liability from the very beginning. "Thank you for that, for seeing me." "Always," he promised, pulling her closer as the stars began to appear in the vast Nevada sky. "Always."